Good morning. Welcome to Law Power Hour. Good morning, Mr. Barry.
Hey, great to see you.
Today we have the pleasure of an elder care law attorney, Christopher Barry, coming on. Thank you for joining me.
No, it's my pleasure.
Tell our listeners a little bit about yourself. Where's your office located?
Sure, yeah. So our main office is in Brighton, Michigan, and then we have offices in Livonia, Novi, as well as Bloomfield Hills.
And as an elder care law lawyer, what do you do?
Yeah, well, it's important to define what elder care means. So a lot of people are familiar with what estate planning is. So estate planning would be planning for what happens if you pass away. We do that, but elder care and elder law is not just planning for what happens if you pass away, but also planning for what happens if you don't, and you face all the issues that go along with aging. So not only are we planning for what happens upon death, where does your stuff go, but also we're planning for what happens if you continue to age, you're diagnosed with dementia, Alzheimer's, you're facing long-term care costs, all the things that go along with that.
So it's preparing in advance to ensure that the right decisions are made if you become ill, disabled, impaired, infirmed, or unfortunately, if you die.
You're correct in the sense that it's really about developing a plan, having a plan for life as well as when you pass away.
My big question of the day is if I die tomorrow and I don't have a will and I have 3 children and one says, well, let's save money, let's cremate Dad, that way we don't have to spend $20,000 for a funeral, and the other 2 children want a funeral, who's going to win?
Well, the answer to that is what I learned in my first year of law school, to answer any question with "it depends," because it makes us sound smart as lawyers. So it does depend, but basically what would happen is ideally the family is able to work it out amongst themselves, and so you might have a majority rule. But worst case scenario, and you probably know this, is that if there's not a plan in place and there ends up being a conflict, then it's going to end up going into court. And the court's going to decide that. And typically what they would probably do in that situation is go with the majority.
Okay, so it wouldn't be 3 urns, the majority would win, and there'd be an internment.
Most likely, yes. But again, once you get into court, you never know what's going to happen with regards to those types of things.
Okay. I run into so many questions about probate, and I hope our listeners call in while the show was on. For example, a widow has a house. And she said, I've got 3 daughters, and I want to give the house to all 3 of my daughters, and any one of them can live in the house. And I explained to them that this is really a problem, because if you have one live in the house, you give it to all 3 children, you can never sell it.
Right, yeah. And so, again, it's all about having a good plan so things don't end up going into probate. And a lot of times the biggest issues, you hit the nail on the head with that, is with regards to real estate. So, like you said, if you have 3 daughters, you want one of them to live there, what happens if the other kids want to end up selling that property? So by setting things up properly ahead of time, you can answer all of those questions so that when we're talking about leaving a legacy, we're not always talking about leaving lots of money, but we're just leaving things to the next generation so that it's not a mess, so that there's not any type of family conflict. I remember growing up, I was about 12, and I had 3 cousins from my uncle, and my uncle passed away, and he didn't have a lot of money, but he did have a $10,000 life insurance policy. And he had a will that said it should go to 1/3 to each one of his sons, which makes sense. He loves them equally. But this life insurance policy said it goes outright to the youngest child. And so it caused this family conflict because the 3 brothers thought it should, or the 2 of the brothers thought it should be split up 3 ways, while the life insurance policy going to that youngest son said, hey, no, I should get that life insurance policy. And it really split up our family just because my uncle didn't have a proper estate plan in place.
The same thing holds true with personal effects. You're wearing a watch every day, and your son says, Dad, if something happens, I want your watch. Your daughter says, Dad, if something happens, I'd like to have your signet ring from law school.
Right.
How do you handle these issues? I mean, these are, they sound like really unimportant issues, but they're very important issues because they go to the very heart of the relationship that exists in the family unit. Because this is family treasure. This is the kind of object that you want to keep within the family. You don't want it to go to the pawn shop. You don't want it to go and be sold for gold, or the watch is sold, or whatever. How do you handle these issues? And the reason I'm asking this is because I come from old school. I believe everybody needs a will. They don't need to have a big fancy will, but everybody needs a will. Do you agree with me?
Well, yeah, and I think there's two parts to that question. And the first part is, how do you handle the things like watches and personal property? And you're right in the sense that typically people aren't just fighting over the money. What they fight more over is what mom served Thanksgiving dinner on, or mom's wedding ring, or jewelry. And so again, it's all about having a proper plan in place. And one of the things that we incorporate in any type of comprehensive estate plan is what we call a personal property memorandum, so that you can decide where you want your hunting rifle to go, where you want your jewelry to go, things like that, so that there's not a fight once you pass away. Because once you're gone, no one can ask you questions. No one can figure out where stuff was supposed to go. And then the second piece of that is the comment that everyone needs a will. And I certainly agree with that, because understand that everyone has an estate plan, whether they like it or not. And if you haven't put any pen to paper, then it's going to be the state coming up with an estate plan for you, and that's called dying intestate. So most people don't want to leave it up to the courts and judges to decide things, so they should take matters into their own hand and create a plan. And whether that's a will-based estate plan, or maybe looking at a trust as a way to avoid probate. Because one of the big things that people need to understand is that all a will does is gives instructions probate court on how to administer your estate. So if you want to keep things out of probate, you might want to do more than just a will. And then also there's the elder care component of what we do, of we're not just deciding where your stuff goes when you pass away, but the bigger issue that I'm worried about is what happens if you don't pass away? What happens if you get a knock on your head and you're unable to make financial or medical decisions? So in addition to the will, we think that at least a financial power of attorney and a medical power of attorney are key ingredients to making sure that you have at least the basics in place.
Okay, we're going to talk about those in 1 second.
Sure.
But what's really important to understand, are these services that you provide expensive? Let's talk about this.
Sure.
You know, we hear stories about estates and trusts costing thousands of dollars.
Mm-hmm.
Is it expensive to have a simple will?
Yeah. Well, the answer to that is, like I said, that first year in law school, the answer is it depends. It really depends on what you're looking at doing. But just putting together a very simple estate plan, like a will and powers of attorney, that can be done for less than $1,000. So a couple $100 can get you a powers of attorney, will, or worst case, you can even go online. Sometimes having something is better than having nothing. Or even at library, they have examples you can use. Or you can even write out your own will. So in Michigan, we have what we call a statute called a holographic will. So as long as you write something out in your own handwriting and you sign and date it, that's a will. And sometimes having that is better than having nothing at all.
Well, before we get to the holographic will, we're going to talk about these other documents that are really necessary. Is it more important to have a will than a power of attorney, for example?
Sure. So that's a great question, and I think my answer would be specifically, as an elder care attorney, I'm more concerned about your life while you're living. And my first concern is to make sure that you're taken care of. And so I think a financial and medical power of attorney, so that if you do get a knock in your head, someone can take care of you. If you become incapacitated, that should be the starting point.
Now, listeners out there, if you're not calling in, I expect you to call in, because I'm going to tell you a horrible story right now. And if that phone doesn't ring after the story, I'm going to be ticked off. I have a client who had open heart surgery. So he was in the hospital, and then he got sick, and he had to stay in the hospital for about 4 months. He allowed a 17-year-old daughter to take a Social Security check every month, supposedly to pay the mortgage. He got out of the hospital, he came home, he was in foreclosure. It's a real life story. And he was on a month-to-month Social Security retirement check of $1,800 a month. Budgeted $900 a month to pay the mortgage. This is a real life problem. If he had a power of attorney, would that happen?
No, because with that power of attorney, you're appointing someone to make these decisions for you, but most importantly, they owe you a fiduciary duty to act on your behalf. So they can't use that money and go buy themselves a car or something like that. They always have to act on your behalf. And that's why a power of attorney is so powerful versus just doing joint ownership or like you said, just taking that check.
You can designate in the power of attorney with specificity, with specific, straightforward language, what powers you give the individual, can't you?
Right, and that's important because understand that not all powers of attorney are created equal. Some powers of attorney are very general that just give general authority, but a lot of times in these days, banks want to see very specific language listed out. So our powers of attorney in our office, we include expanded powers so that if we need to move money around to help qualify for governmental benefits like the VA benefit or Medicaid, that financial power of attorney allows us to move that money around.
Tell our listeners how they can get a hold of you.
Sure. Yeah, so there's two ways to get a hold of us. One via phone, where you can call us at any time at 888-390-4360. And then also you can visit us online at michiganestateplanning.com.
Now, one of the big issues that I have people call me about all the time is when they get older and they're receiving Medicare and Medicaid supplement, and they get sick, and they own a home, and it's in their name, and they want to transfer it, but there's a time limit, isn't there, when they can do this?
Sure, yeah. And so this is what we call going through the elder care journey. So people aren't just living at home and then passing away or going from healthy to passing away. They're going through this elder care journey where now they may need home care or assisted living or nursing home care. And so we have different governmental benefits like Medicaid that can help pay that cost of care. But there's an asset test associated with Medicaid where a single individual can only have $2,000 worth of countable assets. And you mentioned the home, and the home is an exempt asset. But since 2011, Michigan has had a state recovery where they can place a lien on the home for whatever the state of Michigan paid out in benefits.
Okay, wait a second. Let's explain this
Sure.
very carefully. I have $60,000 equity in my house.
Right.
I go in a nursing home.
Yeah.
The house is in my name. I'm just making this as real as possible for the listeners. The house is in my name. That house of mine is free and clear. $120,000 is spent taking care of me. I die. That house doesn't go to my estate, does it?
No, well, what's going to happen is they're going to place a lien on the home for $120,000, and now the state of Michigan will take that home away from you. Now, there's things that we can do to avoid this. One of the things that we can do right now is a special type of deed. It's called a ladybird deed. And what it says is that the home is in your name while you're alive, so it's exempt from Medicaid while you're alive. And then when you pass away, it avoids estate recovery as well as avoiding probate, so it can go directly to your loved ones. So that's a way that we can avoid that Medicaid lien.
With the ladybird deed, is there a time limit? And this is what's really important. If you're out there listening, I want you to hear about this ladybird deed because it's really important. Is there a time limit that I have to prepare that deed?
Yeah, so the great thing about the ladybird deed and estate recovery as we have it now is that you can do that at any time, meaning there's no time limit. Okay, because Medicaid does have a 5-year look-back period where they look to see if you've made any gifts. But the great thing about the ladybird deed is it's something that you can do now if you have a loved one in a nursing home. It avoids that whole 5-year look-back period because it's not a gift. What it's saying is the house is in your name while you're alive, and then it's like a beneficiary designation where it goes to your loved ones, thereby avoiding probate and avoiding estate recovery upon death. So that's one of the few things that we can do at the last minute to help avoid that Medicaid or nursing home spend down.
Now, if I just transferred the house to my son and didn't use a ladybird deed, that would be considered a gift, wouldn't it?
Yeah, and not only would it be considered a gift, but it also would be considered an investment, and that would penalize you for Medicaid purposes, where now the state of Michigan will not pay you any benefits, with the idea that whoever you gifted that asset to, gifted that house to, is now going to pay your nursing home care for a period of time. So it's very draconian the way these rules are set up.
Hold on for a second here. Good morning.
Good morning.
How you doing?
I'd like to know what sort of expenses would one incur from Medicaid at the time of death?
So the question is, what type of expenses would you incur from Medicaid at the time of death?
Would Medicaid go after it? What type of expenses would they go after?
Yeah, so what Medicaid is going to go after with the state recovery, the way the law is set up now, is that they can only go after assets that end up going into probate. So if there's any assets that end up going into probate, for example, your home, if it's just in your name, or if there's any type of accounts that are just in your name when you pass away and they end up going through probate, they can actually place a lien and become a creditor where now they have to be paid off first before any of the beneficiaries of that estate would receive any assets. So one of the keys to avoiding estate recovery and avoiding this Medicaid lien or avoiding Medicaid going after any of your assets upon death is, as of right now, the way the laws are written is to just avoid probate. Now, Michigan may pass enhanced estate recovery in the future. They've tried to do this already, where they go after more than just the assets in probate. But as of right now, Medicaid can only go after assets that end up in probate. So if you want to avoid those Medicaid liens, then you need to ensure that you avoid probate.
You see, the thing about
Well, it
Medicaid,
was really what I want to know, what services that Medicaid provides that they would charge you for. What type of services?
Sure. So the question is what type of services that Medicaid would provide. The one that I focus on as an elder law
That
attorney.
they'll come back and charge you for, yeah.
Yeah, the one that I focus on as an elder law attorney would be Medicaid in the nursing home. So if you have a loved one that needs nursing home level care and spends any time in a nursing home, and Medicaid pays out any benefits, that's the services they're looking to recoup.
we're not talking about the ordinary daily.
I'm past a year. I'm sorry.
Okay, we're not talking.
And she wasn't on any type of nursing home Medicaid, but she did own a house that she owned out clear, and I guess my sister took it over. So would we have a problem with probate court, even though she has no issues with Medicaid?
Well, the answer, you say that your sister's kind of taken over the house. Was she named joint owners to that house?
Yes.
Okay, so then what happens with that is that because the house avoids probate, most likely you're not going to run into any issues.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. Yes, I have a question about a loved one's passing when they have bills for credit cards or such, and they have a will and make you the beneficiary. Are you responsible to pay the loved one's bills when they don't have the access to fully pay those bills? And is it a time limit on when that might expire if it is in effect?
You know, that's a very good question because it happens quite often. If you'd like to give the answer, I have an answer, but you may not agree with my answer, so I'd like to hear yours first.
Well, I think there's a legal answer and a real world answer. So the legal answer is that if there are known creditors and there's a probate estate, those known creditors have to be paid off before any assets could be distributed to beneficiaries. So if there's no assets, then basically those creditors don't have anything necessarily to attach to. So that's the legal answer, and maybe...
My real answer is go to an attorney, have an attorney write a letter to them and tell them it's a zero asset estate. That means you don't have any money. And then if they want to go check with the probate court and an estate has not been opened, it's a non-issue. If an estate has been issued, they can file a claim in the probate court, and if there are any assets that are transferred, then they're going to have a claim. So,
I have one more question. The Secretary of State is required to be able to, I guess, get property in your name, and is there any assets? Well, there is no assets. Oh, I guess a quick transfer of Secretary of State can be done. And do you have a lawyer?
Yeah, so just if I can restate the question, how do assets kind of pass upon death? Do you have to use a lawyer? Do you have to use go through a estate or probate? And to answer that, there's basically 4 ways that assets pass out of your name when you pass away. And the first way is through joint ownership. So I think we mentioned, a previous caller mentioned how a home passed from mom to sister because it was joint owners. When mom passed away, it passed to the sister. So that's the first way. Or if you have a husband and wife, joint owners on a checking account, husband passes away, it goes to the wife. Second way would be through beneficiary designations. So maybe you have a life insurance policy. It pays out to whoever's named as a beneficiary, thereby avoiding probate. The third option would be through a trust, and there's different types of trusts. There's living trust, there's asset protection trusts. But if it's in a trust, it's going to avoid probate. But if an asset doesn't pass through joint ownership, beneficiary designation, or trust, then it ends up going through probate and an estate needs to be set up. So in addition to that, there's certain exemptions. For example, with automobiles, you can go to Secretary of State with a death certificate and they'll transfer it next of kin. And that's not something that you necessarily need an attorney for.
or you also have small estate division where you can handle these matters.
Right. So also, if there's less than basically $20,000 in assets, you can do a small estate affidavit where you walk into probate court and it can be wrapped up within a day versus going through a full 5-month probate estate.
Can you say that's the small asset recovery?
Yeah, there's a small estate affidavit procedure where basically you fill out a form to say that you paid off the funeral expenses of your loved one, and they'll issue a letter of authority that allow you to transfer the assets out of their name without having to go through the full 5-month probate process.
But you have to bring
Will that
receipts.
grant
Now
you
listen,
the Secretary of State?
no, the Secretary of State would be to transfer.
No, I said Executive of State.
The executor of the estate would be somebody designated in a will. If you don't have a personal representative or an executor, then you can go down there and do it on the small estate. But if you have an executor, you're not going to be able to go down on the small estate and do it.
No, I was designated beneficiary, and I'm hearing that I need to be the Executive of State for the property that my mother did own that I'm paying a mortgage on.
Okay, yeah. So if your mom passed away and there's assets that are left in her name, then most likely what has to happen is that someone, maybe you as the beneficiary, needs to petition the probate court to open up an estate, and they'll appoint you as the executor or personal representative to then have the legal authority to transfer the assets out of your deceased mother's estate into your name.
Thanks for calling. Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Okay.
Good. I'm calling to see how can you leave grandchildren under 18 something in your will?
Yeah, so the question is, how do we leave things to our grandchildren or minors under a will?
Yes.
Yeah, so one of the things I'd recommend is looking at either a will or setting up a living trust. But basically what you're doing is you're leaving those assets in trust for minors. For example, I have young children. I have a 7-year-old and a 4 3/4-year-old, and my daughter won't let anyone forget the 4 3/4 part. God forbid myself and my wife pass away. We don't want that going outright to those young children because they'd spend that money on Legos, which I think would be kind of fun, but probably not the best use of the money. Mm-hmm. So instead, what we've done is we've set it up so that the assets don't go directly to those minor children, but instead they're held in trust. And so think of it kind of like a suitcase. Instead of giving the assets directly to those young grandchildren, you put these assets into a suitcase, whether it's a living trust or a testamentary trust that springs into being out of probate, and you hand that suitcase to someone else that you've appointed as a trustee, and they'll manage the money for the benefit of those young grandchildren. And that could be a family member, that could be their parents, that could be anyone of your choice.
Thank you. Good morning.
Yes, good morning.
How are you doing?
Hello? Yes. I'd like to know, okay, let's say if you have 4 children and you leave all of them in your will, can 2 of the kids retrieve everything you left and leave the other 2 kids out?
Yeah, so the question is, you put together a will that says it's supposed to be split 4 ways, and then can 2 of those kids just take everything and cut out the other 2 children? Yes. So the answer to that would be legally no. And also one of the things that you could build into your will is what's called a no contest clause. And this is something that we build into our wills and trusts so that if one of the kids were to kind of challenge this, and for example, or in your situation, if 2 of the kids were to try to take all the money and leaving the other 2 kids kind of in the lurch, they could be stricken from receiving anything at the end of the day. So what those 2 children that are in the right where they're trying to have kind of their share taken away from them, what they would have to do is petition the court to basically stop that. And then if there's a no contest provision inside of that trust or will, then those 2 kind of bad actor children would not receive anything at the end of the day.
Now, I think you just brought up an important subject, though. Let's say one of those children had special needs. How do you handle that?
Well, yeah, if one of the children have special needs or receiving governmental benefits that we don't want to disqualify them for, then it's very important that we plan for this ahead of time. And what we would do is build in a supplemental needs trust or a special needs trust in the trust or will that mom or dad is setting up. And so that gets around that situation of if you do have a child that has special needs. In the past, we saw them disinherited a lot of times, and you don't need to do that. All you need to do is build in this special needs language inside the trust so that you don't disinherit that child who may have more needs than anyone else.
And you have to be real particular when you do this to make sure that that child who has the special needs isn't passed around the family so the family can siphon off the benefits at the expense of the child. I'm very serious about this.
Right, yeah, and that's why picking that role of a trustee or the person who's holding on to the suitcase or managing the money is so important, because they really are in a lot of control, and it would be up to one of the other beneficiaries to kind of throw a flag on them to say that they're acting badly in a situation like you just mentioned.
Tell our listeners how to reach you and your associates, because what you're doing is really important. You're fielding a lot of questions this morning. You're opening minds up so people understand what they have to do, and I want them to be able to reach out to you.
Sure, yeah. You can give our office a call anytime at 888-390-4360, or you can reach out to us online, ask us any questions by going to michiganestateplanning.com, and there's a box where if you do have any questions, you can fill out that questionnaire and we'll get back to you.
Now, you brought a couple books along with you today.
Sure.
The first one piqued my interest. It's called Tax-Free Money. Well, I'll take that.
Yeah. Well, continuing on, it's actually called Tax-Free Money for Long-Term Care. And what it is a book that I co-wrote with a colleague of mine out of St. Louis, where a lot of my clients are concerned about long-term care costs in the future. And so we go over different ways that they can help pay that devastating cost of long-term care, whether it's home care, assisted living, or nursing home care, and in addition receive tax-free money, whether it's from the VA benefit or from asset-based long-term care strategies, to help pay that devastating cost of long-term care.
Well, you know, long-term care is going to become a way of life in this country because President Trump is going to completely annihilate Obamacare. So if someone gets sick, you're going to have to add a room on the house and have 24-hour attendant care in the house. That's a fact of life, isn't it?
Right, yeah, and you couple that with the fact that, again, people aren't just going from healthy to passing away. When I started my practice, I started doing just straight estate planning, which is planning for death. But very quickly, I was getting calls that mom didn't pass away, but she fell, broke her hip, and now needs nursing home care. So it's going to be a fact of life, that's for sure.
Well, my rule is prepare to live, not to die. So in preparing to live, and long-term care is part of preparing to live.
Right, yeah, and we want to make sure that we have the best quality of life possible. So that's why we try to keep as many options open in terms of what our future looks like. Look,
See, one of the problems with American society today is that there are a lot of elder care facilities, senior facilities, nursing homes. A lot of people want to wash their hands of their parents when they get older. They want their money, but they don't want their parents around because their parents have needs. But in the real world, their parents are going to be around, and they're going to be taking care of them. So what can people do to take care of their parents so that they can stay at home? This is the right thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
The wrong thing to do is put them in the hands of someone who's going to attend to them in a nursing home, look at them every 4 hours, if they're lucky.
right, yeah. So that's why we need to understand just how this elder care or long-term care journey works, is that we only have certain ways that we can pay for it, especially if we're trying to keep people at home as long as possible, which is always number one in terms of our goals. And there's different things we can do, where I have a lot of my families where the son or daughter, they've basically put their life on hold to become a full-time caregiver for mom or dad. And one of the things that we can do, especially if mom or dad was a veteran or surviving spouse of a veteran, is we can bring in additional money from the VA to help pay even a family member to help provide care for mom or dad, where we can bring in an extra $1,000 to $2,000 a month to help pay that family caregiver. So our goal is always to keep people in the least restrictive type of care possible. So if that means living at home with assistance, then that's the number one goal.
The goal is to keep the family unit together. And the goal is, when you're doing probate, is to prevent the dissension, like you started out your discussion about your cousins.
Right. Yeah, and a lot of it comes down to just having a plan in place, having a plan for what happens if you age and if you want to age in home, and then also having a plan for what happens when you pass away to make sure that you don't cause any family disharmony.
Now, you brought one other book with you. I want to go over that very quickly so we know what's going on here today.
Sure, yeah. So the other book I have is a book that I had published in 2014, and it's called The Caregiver's Legal Guide to Planning for a Loved One with Chronic Illness. And what we do in the book is we go through that whole elder care journey of what happens if you start to need assistance, whether it's because of dementia or Alzheimer's or just the frailties of aging. And I tell the story of a family that I worked with. Obviously, we had to change the names for attorney-client privilege, but of Bill and Judy, and how Judy had been taking care of her husband Bill for a number of years with Alzheimer's dementia. And then it got to the point where Judy just could not physically take care of him anymore. And it walks them through the journey of discovering how the long-term care system works and how the system's broken and how to try to use that system to make sure that Bill and Judy have the best quality of life possible.
You don't need a lot of money to do this, do you?
Well, the long-term care journey, it certainly can be expensive, and that's why we wrote the book, to try to figure out how to get different resources to help pay for long-term care.
Okay. Thanks for coming.
No, my pleasure. Thank you.
Come back again, please.
Thank you.
Are you in legal trouble? Are you in need of legal advice? Or just have general legal questions? Call 1-800-529-8721. That's 1-800-LAW-USA1. And watch Law Power Hour and get your questions answered by experienced attorneys who are experts in their field. That's Law Power Hour, hosted by Barry Keller, attorney at law. Saturdays at 10 a.m. here on WHPR Detroit Live.
Construction Trades Resource Fair. And today we have two guests who are going to be involved in that. Welcome, Lucia.
Yes,
And
welcome.
Mr. Willie Bell, how
Yes,
are
sir.
you?
Wonderful, sir. Thanks for having me.
I want to know what your role is, Lucia, in the fair that's coming up on the 30th at Tabernacle.
Sure. My role, I work for an organization called Sir Metro Detroit. We're an organization that's been in the community in Southwest Detroit for 46 years, and our role is to be one of the partners, or a nonprofit partner that does training programs for Detroiters.
Okay, so what does Sir Metro do? I mean,
So
you said
we're-
a training program, but how do you train? Where do you train? Who do you train?
Sure. So we are a workforce development organization that trains adults and youth. So we have created a career pathway for individuals who live in Detroit, who want to learn a variety of different programming or training opportunities. So from our youth, we have a school. It's called SARE Youth Build Learning Academy for disengaged and what we call opportunity youth who have either dropped out of high school or just don't fit in the regular school system. So we have an online training program that are actual a school. They'll earn their high school diploma, and then we have a component that has a youth build program, which is a national model for youth who want to get into the skilled trades and also earn their GED
Okay, now-
during that.
If I want the online program,
Mm-hmm.
are you going to give me a computer or do I have to come to your center?
No, you come to our center, and you are, it's a regular school day. You come in from 8 to 2, and you'll get your high school completion.
I promise you that I wouldn't make you nervous today. Now, just relax. I got some important questions to ask you. So I
Yeah.
come to the school. I've got to enroll in the school. I have to
Yes.
participate.
Yes,
Okay, this is what's important.
yes,
Does this allow me to have credits?
absolutely.
Is it a GED, or am I going to get a regular diploma when I get done?
Both. You, depending on the track that you come in, you will either get your high school completion, which is a high school diploma, or you can also, if you come in and you already have some high school credits, then you will, most likely, and you're interested in the skilled trades, you can go into the GED portion, or no, I'm sorry, let me back that up. If you dropped out of high school and want to earn your GED, you also can do that as well.
And suppose I don't know how to use a computer. Is there somebody there who's going to teach me how to use a computer?
Absolutely.
Is somebody going to be there to mentor me if I don't have the ability to read, write, or understand everything that's in front of me?
Yes.
So I'm going to have somebody who's going to work as a tutor with me at the program.
We have certified teachers.
Well, what's the ratio?
It's 20 to 1.
20?
20 students
To
to an
one.
instructor.
Okay.
Yes.
And what are your hours?
We are 9 to 5.
So why is this program so important as it relates to the resource fair?
Well, not only that, for our individuals, for our youth that want to get into the skilled trades, it's important for them if they, at the end of the line, want an apprenticeship. But we also have an adult side that has our Bridges to Career Opportunities program, who they are only focused on individuals who want to get into an apprenticeship.
Okay, what is your relationship with the apprenticeship program so we know why this program really offers a unique advantage to individuals who want to participate?
Well, our role, or my role, is I am the program manager. So, we want to make sure that we're connecting those individuals. But, our mission at SARE is to advance people and grow businesses. So it's important for us to create a pipeline to not only advance the individuals who we serve, but also to grow and prepare the talent to get them to the next step. And so being a part of this coalition is not only going to create that opportunity for the people that we serve, but also a way to get out there and get our word out there of what services we provide.
I want our listeners to understand this question. It's very important.
Mhm.
What's the connection between your organization and the construction trades that gives some assurance to people if they participate in the program, they have the opportunity to go into an apprenticeship?
Well, our connection is that we help prepare them. We have a training program for, that we can prepare them, and also we have really strong relationships with the unions. We've been very successful in placing individuals straight from a pre-apprenticeship program to a straight apprenticeship.
Okay, now this construction trades program is a commitment on the part of the construction trades to work with organizations like yours
Yes,
so that they further develop job opportunities.
absolutely.
Okay, that's what I wanted the listeners to understand. Now, if they come down to the program on the 30th, is there a process that they're going to go through?
The process is, I think they're going to be handed out information that they're able to apply. They'll know what documents to bring, and also to understand, the opportunities that are available to them. So I think there'll be information available for them, and then they can apply at a later time.
Well, last week we talked about screening because we're doing an expungement portion of the program. You want people with clean records. You want their driver's license taken care of. You want to make sure they have no liens from the friend of the court. You want them on their feet so if they get trained, they can go to work, correct?
Yes, correct.
So you're going to participate in that screening process.
Absolutely.
Now, in terms of the educational side of it, how are you going to determine who's qualified to participate in the program? Mr. Bell may be qualified to participate in the program because he reads and writes and understands the English language and is a good math student. Mr. Keller may not be prepared because he only went to the 3rd grade. How are you going to make those decisions? Who can participate in the program?
For this program particularly, well, there's going to be people there available to provide resources for anybody that needs further academic assistance as far as GED in high school. And there's also, a handful, or not a handful, there's many organizations who provide that, that academic background.
Does your organization provide the academic background to bring people up to speed?
For 3rd grade and below, it's more of like a remedial education, so we would refer them to an agency that we might have partners with. But anybody from the 6th grade and up, we absolutely help them.
Did you hear that? From the 6th grade and up? So if you're a high school dropout, that's what I wanted to get at. I'm not
Yes.
picking on you.
No,
I wanted
it's fine.
people to understand, if you're a high school dropout and you went to the 9th grade, you should be there because this is a wonderful opportunity.
Absolutely.
That was my point.
Yes. Yes.
Took a little bit to get it out there,
It's
but
all right.
we got it out there, didn't we? Now, Mr. Willie Bell, you have an organization called FARM.
Family Assistance for Renaissance
I know,
Men.
but it's kind of scary when you use the term
Yes,
farm. You know,
yes.
somebody bit the dust, they went to the farm. I mean, means a lot of things to a lot of people, doesn't it?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, tell me about your organization.
Well, FARM is, first of all, the acronym stands for Family Assistance for Renaissance Men. So for the man who wants to be a family man again and needs some assistance turning his life around with his family, we provide all those barrier-free opportunities for him, help him get out of those situations and help him get on the track that he's trying to get on to be the better father that he should be.
Why can't he just put on his big boy pants and boots and get out there and man up and assume the responsibility and not go to your organization?
Don't we hear that all the time? If the man was not taught, if the man didn't have a father in his life, then we expect that once he's grown, he should know it all. But he doesn't know it because he didn't get the guidance he needed early on in life. So, we realized from the statistics, they tell us that fathers who grew up without fathers in their lives, they become fathers who leave their children as well because they just didn't know any better. But the law has a way of forcing you back to try and get it right. And when they go to try and get it right, where do they go? Who's
So
going
do
to teach them?
Do you mentor?
We absolutely mentor. That's our foundational piece.
Okay.
Our foundational piece is mentoring. Of course, what brought us together here was this coalition with Lucia and the rest of the trades. So we mentor them. That's our number one component of the program. But we also have Wayne State University School of Social Work. We have a licensed social worker as well as the Master of Social Work students who are also building cases for each one of the guys that come to the program so that they can get back into their children's lives legally, technically, and with all the resources they need that way. But the piece that brings us together is the skilled trades component of our program. We teach these guys plumbing, electrical, drywall, paint, masonry, carpentry, the whole 9 yards. We give them an introductory view of what a job looks like, what a skill looks like. Once a guy is forced out into the street and he didn't get that training, didn't get that guidance, he goes to survival mode. Survival mode means he's selling drugs, he's cutting grass, he's doing whatever it is he can do to make some money to survive for himself. And so we give them an opportunity to come into this program, give up those all those illegal issues.
So no means justify the ends?
Absolutely. And so we give them an opportunity to come into the program and give that up. We pay them $10 an hour while they're in the program, but we require that they take 50% of that and put it toward whatever their issues are, be it child support. If you're behind in your child support, that 50% goes toward that. If you need your driver's license back, you need to pay off tickets, 50% goes toward those issues and give you an opportunity to make yourself whole.
How did you start this organization?
Well, I was one of those fathers that learned later in life, almost ran away from my children. I didn't have a father in my life, and because of that, I didn't know. I thought I knew. I left home at 16. I thought I was big and bad enough to do it all, and so I tried it all. And I got out there and had children early, out of wedlock, and next thing you know, fell on my face, and I cried out to God, and I said, God, if you get me out of this, I'm going to find you. And so, found a church, and from church, Word of Faith is where I attend. What I realized is from the teaching is what a father's role is, what a man's role is, what a family looks like. Didn't have those visions growing up because my mother, of course, she was a single parent. And what we saw was normal to us.
Interesting that you said that, because I've talked to a lot of pastors, and I say, well, I see a lot of women come to church, but I don't see a lot of men. But if I see men, I see the whole family.
Yes, sir.
Would you agree with me?
I would absolutely agree with you.
So when you have that family unit together, everybody goes to church.
And it's a good balance. It's a good balance. Without the mother around, if a father tried to raise a young lady, for example, he could be successful. However, chances of him being successful and giving that young lady all that she needs to be, balanced, he may not be able to do that.
So what you do is try and redirect individuals. Don't mind me for defining what you're doing, but
Yes, sir.
you try and redirect individuals, give them an opportunity to get an education, a purpose, and you teach them a structure. Take 50%. I mean, you actually teach them how to save money.
Absolutely, we do.
And allocate the money correctly for these different services. And you utilize the services of social workers. Social workers are just lawyers without a law license anyways.
Yes, sir.
They're performing a lot of the same social functions, but they don't have the ability to go in the courtroom and speak on behalf of individuals. So you're redirecting individuals. So if I come over to this program on the 30th, and I'm a convicted felon, I did 15 years, I've been out for 5 years. I have a reason for saying this because of the expungement rules. I'm off parole and probation, and they come see my office first and we get them expunged. You can get them on their feet, can't you?
Yes. I need to say that we have 8 judges here in Michigan that support us. We have 6 attorneys helping these fathers with some of their issues. And we have one of the judges sit on our board. Being a nonprofit organization, that's huge for us.
Don't tell us the judge, because
No, I
judges
won't
aren't
do
supposed
that.
to sit on any boards.
Well, she's a retired judge.
Okay, well,
Yes,
that's fine. And then Lucia's organization is going to make sure that you get the skill set necessary, correct?
Absolutely.
And by the way, we're part of the same coalition here, so
Yes.
just wanted to make sure we make that point.
Well, we're all part of the same coalition for the construction trades program.
Yes, sir.
To further advance the community, to get people back on their feet, get them
Yes.
jobs, get them in the right direction.
Yes.
Pour no more, get on the train here, the right train in the right direction. You can own a home.
Mm-hmm.
You can have a car, you can pay your bills, and you can spend time with your family.
Yes.
Sir.
Now, isn't one of the big fears that both of you have, the friend of the court's going to come out and take the money away?
Well, this is a barrier-free coalition. So when they come out to this program, this is a it's an arrest-free zone, I should say.
Okay, listen to this. This is real important. You're coming to this program in the 30th, and it's a neutral zone.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
That means that the police department, the sheriff's department, friend of the court, no one's going to be there to arrest you.
No.
I'm telling you this in advance because I've had many expungement fairs and people hide from them. They don't want to come out. They don't want to get services because they think they're going to get arrested. This is a free zone.
To say it would be a safe haven for the individuals to come in and be able to have access to all of these opportunities that will be available for them.
It's a safe harbor day.
And that's usually a lot of the reasons why a lot of guys do not go to court when they should to take care of their issues or even to inquire, because they think once they go to court, they're going to instantly be locked up.
They're not going to be locked up, but in their mind, they believe they're going to be locked up. And if they have huge child support, they're not going to drive a vehicle because they're going to refuse, the Secretary of State's going to refuse to give them driving privileges because of the lane. Okay, what's the date and where is it at?
The event is at the Tabernacle Missionary Baptist Church on November 30th, and it will begin at 10 a.m. to 2 p.m., and there'll be a variety of workshops available and a lot of legal assistance available as
Are
well.
you going to be there?
I absolutely will.
Are you going to be there?
Absolutely, yes,
Good,
sir.
we'll all be there that day. Thanks so much. Have a great day.